Bang, we are live. Welcome to the Thunder from Down Under podcast, our first one for 2022. Hope everyone had a great Christmas and New Year, had a great festive season. Wish you all the best for this year, 2022, in your investing. And we've got a very special guest coming in today. He's all the way from Melbourne, Australia. As I've said in a few of the promos in the Facebook groups, I know him as Warren C. He's known down here as the Wizard of Oz. That's his nickname that we've given him. And he's got an interesting story that we wanted to share with everyone today. It's an inspirational story. So he's been in the business about 2 years. From Melbourne, Australia. He's been in wholesaling and US real estate for about 2 years. He's probably claim to fame is JVing and dispoing. He's done a lot of his own deals, but he's really carved out a business in JV and dispoing, so which is very relevant to my Facebook group. So just sort of get him on. And another interesting factor is he's actually now coaching US students on US real estate from Melbourne, Australia. So it's just really awesome story. So without any further ado, I'll get the main man himself, Warren C, to come on and just tell us, welcome Warren, and it's great to have you here. Can you just tell us about how this all started? What made an Aussie guy in Melbourne, the suburbs of Melbourne, decide to do US real estate?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. I think it was July 19. Well, actually, my background's I've been running a few businesses for the last 15, 20 years, importing products from China into Australia and exporting Australian wine to China. And it was around July 19 where I thought I don't want to be relying on one product, because wine was mainly my main business at the time, and I don't want to rely just on China as being one country. So I thought I really needed another income source. Didn't really think too much about real estate in the US until I had some friends that were buying rentals there. So yeah, I thought I'd look at the US market. Had been investing in Australia rentals for I think 20 years, but obviously in Australia the actual cash flow is very small, very minimal. Once you've got a mortgage in place and all your expenses, the actual cash flow is very small. So yeah, it wasn't until I had some friends and people I knew that were investing in the US talking about, the Midwest states generating a better cash flow than Australia that sort of got me interested.
Yeah, so we wind back. It's a bit over 2 years. You've told me it's a bit over 2 years. How did you find out about it? Like, especially wholesaling, because wholesaling just doesn't happen in Australia. There's no such thing. How did what was the first sort of thing that pricked your interest, and then how did you start, getting into it from there?
I had a discussion with someone talking about American properties, someone that I know. He was a little bit vague about it himself. He was sort of getting into it, buy and holds, and they're looking at reselling them to like Australian investors, flipping them to Australian investors. I only just discovered podcasts on my own iPhone a month earlier. So what I actually did a search on my podcast, USA Real Estate. And the first podcast that I came across was Steve Trang's Real Estate Disruptors.
Oh, yep.
So I listened to that, and they kept talking about, he was interviewing his guests, and most of them were wholesalers. And I didn't really understand what it was at the start until I listened to a few episodes and Googled it on YouTube, what wholesaling was. As you know yourself, it's not really something that we do here in Australia. So it took me a little while to sort of get a bit of a grasp on it.
It's interesting. We got to meet Steve Trang, not meet him, but we were on a virtual Zoom call and in a group, and it was a weird story because I was about to head out the door and you sent me a message and said, Steve Trang is going to be on this group that I've been invited into. And you actually got to thank him personally and say, look, you started this journey for me, Steve.
That was pretty cool. I mean, he was the guy who got me into real estate or wholesaling, or his podcast. And I think I listened to basically every podcast that he had, and got me into wholesaling. Yeah.
Who were some of the other people you listened to early, Warren C? I know you're a big podcast listener. I know that you've always got your headphones on in the car. Who were some of the others that were really
Well,
got
Real
you
Estate
moving?
Disruptors was the first one. Then, Bigger Pockets, Wholesaling Inc. Jerry Norton came a little bit later. I think he was more YouTube. And I think he's probably one of the best for content out there. I love his stuff as well. But yeah, they're the main ones. Lease options with Joe McCall, I listen to a fair bit, but mainly Bigger Pockets, Wholesaling Inc., Real Estate Disruptors. I like those sort of styles, interview style, with real stories.
Yeah,
And the main thing I got from was the abundant. I even said that to Steve, I think, on that Zoom call with you. It's the abundant, open, transparent mindset that really sort of lit up for me. Obviously here, it's a different mindset here. You would be sharing ideas or brainstorming with people because people are seen as competitors. So that was something that I really took away from Steve Trainings's podcast, but also Bigger Pockets and Wholesaling Inc. as well.
yeah, definitely. And with both of us, because I mean, our story is we didn't know each other, and then I think it was actually through Alex Youngblood had sent you a message, said, "I'll check out this guy who's one of my students," and sent you a video. And all of a sudden, you reached out to me, and we become very good friends. And I think the first 3 or 4 months, we didn't meet each other. We just spoke. We did messenger messages. We did all that sort of stuff because we're in lockdown here in Melbourne. So, um, you know, the nickname then, I coined the nickname Warren C because you're a big fan of the American culture and the positivity and the abundance mindset and sharing information. And, one of your the other people that you listen to in sort of probably the motivation thing was who was it?
Garyvee.
Garyvee? That's right,
Yeah,
Garyvee.
I learned
Yeah,
a lot from him and what he talks about, and gets a bit full on for me sometimes. But I listen to him every so often, and yeah,
yeah. You
definitely.
can't have him on when the kids are around, can you? Because he drops the F bomb and that a fair bit for effect. But yeah, like a lot of the sayings that you say to me, a lot of his sayings. So you've listened to all this stuff, you've got going. What obstacles did you face at the start?
Well, I'll note as well what I actually did. Um, I wanted a blueprint. I wanted to sort of fast track it a bit. I know people talk about YouTube University all the time, um, but YouTube University, it's very noisy, and there's a lot of, and as we've come to realize, there's a lot of different strategies from every aspect, whether it's marketing, whether it's the type of deals you do, whether it's wholesale, lease option, creative financing in some way. So I wanted like a blueprint, something to accelerate my learning. I reached out to, and interesting enough, some of those people that were on the podcast had wholesaling courses. So I reached out to about 10 people, emailed 10 people, I had 2 responses. And the question was, can I do this from Australia? One person replied, said, look, not sure, maybe. We have a student from Canada, not sure if you can do it from Australia. And I'm thinking, well, if you can do it from Canada, I'm sure you can do it from Australia. And one other person replied back, and his assistant invited me to a Skype call and said, let's jump on a Skype call, and I want to answer all your questions. So I ended up doing a course with them, and that really accelerated my learning and gave me a bit of a foundation, a bit of a blueprint to start off with. And I think I saved a lot of time. I wouldn't have done it just by watching YouTube videos. Again, it's just too noisy, too much information. I needed that blueprint to try and keep it simple.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Warren C. Because, and especially from another culture, another country, halfway around the world, you need you can watch a lot of YouTube, you can listen to a lot of podcasts, but you need someone to straighten you up. You need someone, and with the blowing up of virtual wholesaling in the States, even if you're working from one side of the country to the other, and you're a beginner, you do need to have like a formatted plan. And we talk about the KISS one. Keep it simple. For yourself and for the people that you work with, you break it down even further to really simple, actionable steps. But I don't want to get off track with this, because what happened is you got started with a course and you chose a market. Where did you end up? Where was an Aussie bloke from
I
the suburbs of
started
Melbourne?
Detroit because I'd met a guy who had buy and hold or rental properties in Detroit. And again, it was more of a cash flow thing, where you could buy a property for 30 or 40K, which is peanuts for an Australian person, but they're obviously 30 or 40,000 for a reason. Obviously, there's cheaper properties and more expensive, but that would generate a $600 or $700, $800 a month income. So to get a 12, 14% net after all expenses was a massive difference to what we're getting here in Australia at 1% or 2% after all expenses. So yeah, that's where I started, and originally, yeah.
So you put your cap on. Detroit City. You hit Detroit City, and I think I met you, and you'd done a couple of deals in Detroit. You'd done some JV deals, and you actually set up a seller finance deal that you've still got now. That you like. So it wasn't just wholesaling. You just looked. Your background over here is you've been in a little bit of real estate. You understand finance. You're a great wheeler and dealer, great negotiator, and you understand cash flow and business. So that would have been really handy for you over there. And like you said, for the people watching, like in Australia, to get 10, 12, and sometimes up to 15% returns on your investment is just unheard of. So your eyes would have lit up, and your eyes would have rolled back and said, how good is this? And we've discussed it too, like, creative finance, wholesaling. We just don't do that in Australia. So the opportunity, and we always talk to all our American friends and say the opportunity over in America is unbelievable. Even in a hot market, there's plenty of opportunity. So anyway, you've set up in Detroit. Tell us how you got into the JV sort of dispo model, because you were doing your own deals, you were doing a lot of that stuff, and then from what I know from you, you've done dozens and dozens of dispo deals last year. You've got a great little business set up. You keep it simple. How did you get into that? How did you go from doing your own deals to, I'm going to specialize in something?
The Detroit deals were mainly with a realtor, whether it's JVing or just advising me and paying him a fee. When I started this business, I never had Facebook. I didn't really have a need for Facebook. I was never really into social media. I was more into LinkedIn for my businesses. And then it was January 2020, I got Facebook, and the course I did had a Facebook group. And that's when I realized I should have, and I was able to network with people in that group and grow my network in the US. But I should have done that obviously a lot earlier. But when I first started, I'd seen a realtor in Detroit. He had a lot of listings, and I actually reached out to him via text message, but he was on LinkedIn as well. So I actually initially started talking to him on LinkedIn and ended up calling him on his cell phone. So that's how I started, was before that. Detroit was one of those areas, was very difficult to try and comp, and it's a block by block or house by house sort of situation. So again, I was that green, and I was generating leads. And when I look back at how many leads I was producing, and I was sending him leads to try and comp up and help me with, and how many deals we could have got, we never got, and which is part of the learning. But spent a small fortune before I started making money as well. Did some deals there, and came across a wholesale deal, and I thought I'll keep it. And that's what you're referring to earlier about the seller financing. Yeah, that's basically how it all happened, the JVing aspect of it. And I think from the early days too, I saw the value in working with people. Got a young family and didn't want to be up all night either. But again, having someone on the ground there, I saw as being benefit for me at the time, and still do in certain markets.
Yeah, that's definitely, we've discussed that. And, I've got a Facebook group that is called REI, Collaborate Network JV, because we knew early, being so far away, that the importance of networking with other people, and that's probably how that evolved. From our discussions and about the need for that, and also the need for, and we've spoken about this, for people to stay in the game when they're new, to be able to look at ways to generate money other than just a pure deal, and that is working with other people, and that is networking with other people. So yeah, definitely. And then it took off. It took off. You started really, like I said, in the early days. I remember when I first met you. I remember you had 6 properties under contract, and only you learned the lesson of, well, that don't count your chickens, or don't till they're hatched, and then like a couple of those closed, but then you turned it around. You turned it into like a model where you basically started working with other wholesalers that bring you the deal, and you just dispo. So how did that come about? Like you've done it in Detroit, and then all of a sudden you're doing it in different states. How did that sort of all come about?
Well, from Detroit, I thought it wasn't a six. I mean, I was doing deals, but it wasn't successful in any way. I mean, it had a long way to go. Like I said, there's a lot of leads that were just falling over. Probably would have been deals. I thought, okay, I could replicate this in different markets, and that failed. I didn't really understand or know how it worked in one market to then go into 6 markets or 5 markets. After some time, after getting a little bit better at it, then I did go into other markets, places like Toledo, and I think Toledo was basically next. Very similar to Detroit, price point wise and rent. And I had again, I was networking with people within the group I did the course with, and met a few of those people, got along well with those people. We're sort of just keeping track on each other, see where we're at in the business. And I had a lady, Christina, that I work with. Actually, she's my partner now, and we work together in the business. And we did have some deals together, like what you said. Yeah, I think we had about 6 or 8 contracts in Youngstown and a few other places. They weren't comped up properly. We didn't really have enough buyers, and we ended up just letting those go. But what actually happened was, I think it was November 20, and then she reached. I was talking to Christina, and I'm like, I've got a deal under contract. I've got buyers that want to buy it, but I can't get access to it because the owner's got personal belongings in there. Well, I think a family member had personal belongings in there, and once they cleared out, I was able to close on it. And I think she said something like, "Oh, look, there's wholesalers with deals in Toledo. If you've got buyers, let's JV with them." I'm like, "Yeah, let's do that." So she reached out to some wholesalers and said, "Look, can we JV? You sign a fee?" And they go, "Yeah, no problem." So I had buyers there, and we ended up just doing dispo for moving those deals for those wholesalers at that point, to a point where some of those wholesalers gave us basically exclusive for a period of time and said, "Can you move our deals? We just want to focus on acquisition. Can you guys do disposition?"
Yeah, and then from there you've spread out to other states and grown the business, because you're big on systems and models and all that sort of stuff. So you built it up in one area, you systemized it, you systemized your boots on the ground, you did all that stuff, and then you've sort of expanded from there. So to where you're going now, where last year you did, dozens and dozens and dozens of deals. So it's amazing. And the other thing, I want to come back later and get your gold nuggets. I want to get some thunderbolts for the people that are watching, which I'll get off you. But I just wanted to touch on because we're relatively new, 2 years from scratch, when probably a year is the school of hard knocks before you start getting anywhere. But for any of the sort of newer people starting off, I just wanted to just ask you the question, like with your students and that, what are the common mistakes you see people making? What if you're working with new students? What would you be advice to anyone that's listening if you're starting off not to do, and the things that you should do?
The common mistake is the common mistake I made when I first started. When I first started, I'll refer to myself first and obviously with the student, but when I first started, my biggest concern was how I was going to get paid being in Australia. That was my
Yep.
big concern.
Yep.
I was thinking about it for a month before I even started. One day, the light bulb went on, and I'm like, I haven't even started. I don't even have a list yet. I haven't blasted one text message out yet or cold call and worry about how I'm going to get paid. What I did then was I mapped out I saw the steps visually that of all the, choosing a market, get a list. Either how do you market that list? Is it texting, cold calling, mailers? How do you communicate with those people? And then you got to do the comps and negotiate price and obviously sell get your marketing, find a buyer, and take it to closing. So I saw all these different steps.
And then boots on the ground is another thing for someone that's doing it from another country.
Yeah.
So you had to work out a system with that.
The marketing, the boots on the ground and things like that. So when I actually had all those steps placed out, then I thought, okay, I'm not going to worry about step 10. Let's just worry about step 1 and 2. That's when I started getting deals. The students I'm working with, the same thing. There was a lady I'm working with. She's like, how do I find buyers? And we had a Zoom. I said, we're not going to be talking about how we find buyers. We're going to talk about what market you're going to be working in. I generally ask where they're located as well. So what market are you in? Where do you live? And what market are you looking to wholesale in? We're not talking about cash buyers. Because the fact of the matter is probably 30% will succeed, or not even that, maybe 20% will succeed. 70, 80% will give up after step 1 and step 2. So there's no point talking about cash buyers anyway. And there's no point spending 45 minutes an hour talking about cash buyers when they haven't started. But again, the point was really to enforce, let's just follow the steps one by one. And after 30 days, 45 days, whatever time it takes, we're going to get to the end. And we did that with some of the students, in 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, they did that. And they found it less noisy, less disruptive. And I did say to them too, if you want to go and watch Jerry Norton video or go to YouTube about comping, go and watch those comping videos, but don't get distracted by looking at subject to or lease options, or you're doing comping on a wholesale deal. That's what you've got to go and look for. So that's that was the probably the common theme is getting
shiny object syndrome.
Shiny object syndrome. Being too far ahead, or sorry, being too concerned about things that are in the future.
Yeah.
And letting that affect us mentally, instead of just saying, let's just make a start.
Yeah.
It's like in any business. You just got to make a start. So it was that. And the other main theme is persistence, and or budget as well. So some people coming into this business thinking they're going to make $1 million on zero money, which is possible, and people are doing that, but very small percentage. I think you've got to have, it's a marathon, isn't it, really? Like, we've been at this now for 2 years, and this will be definitely our biggest year, but it's taken us 2 years. Some people hit it straight away. Sometimes some people don't make money or aren't that successful until year 3 or year 4. And I think it's us that are around longer and more persistent. I mean, we've been around business for a long time, and we know this is like any other business. So treat it like a Subway store or a franchise or another business. This is just a business. It needs a bit of persistence and fine tuning, analyzing, tweaking.
Yeah, and build your systems up. Like I look at, in your particular case, I'll look at, the text platform you had at the start, sending out 100 texts thinking you're going to get a deal. Now you've got a system in place where you just everything you do is systemized, and it's just going out. And I think one of the people that in our learning curve that was really big in this was Joe McCall basically saying it's a marketing business. Your marketing has to happen. I can't remember the exact way he says it, but the marketing has to happen in spite of you. It's got to happen no matter what happens, whether you're doing it or someone else is doing it. And from there, you've built your systems up to a point where you can take that system anywhere in the country and start up in a fresh market, and you'll take off really quick. So I guess the the advice there is to actually have some patience, look at the bigger picture, set up a bit of a game plan at the start, but don't get too shiny object. Don't chase shiny objects, and don't get too hooked on stage 8 and 9 and 10. And I've got to get the best CRM, and I've got to get all this stuff set up. You can actually do that during the process, and you can seek out information and help during the process. Just take action. Take action. They call it take imperfect action, and that's what I'm hearing from your advice, especially. You're on a different time zone and you're a million miles away. You can't just drive down the road and check out a property. You need to have a system in place with your boots on the ground and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, that's awesome. And any other sort of little things that you noticed with the students that you found that you did and that you've improved? Is there any other?
I think the expectation on that big paycheck, a lot of people's, they see the YouTube, the Facebook, the Instagram, people posting $40,000, $50,000 checks and wires and stuff like that, and that's what they're expecting. But I've done JVs with students, or even just random people. I mean, before I was coaching, I helped some just random people out of Facebook groups help them get their first deals, and I did a JV with one of them, and I think we made $1,000 each on a deal in Toledo. It was under contract for a little bit high, but then the seller wouldn't reduce the price. We were very fortunate we had a buyer for it. Actually, I had a good relationship with a particular buyer. Well, actually, Christina did, and we were able to move it. And he was wrapped. He was very happy. What happened? Like I said to him, that was his first deal. Sometimes, like I said to him, and I say to students, it's the getting the first deal done probably carries more weight than the actual dollar value in a lot of cases. Some deals, there's not 20K. These are $10,000 properties. Well, this was an $8,000 property. You're not going to make 20 or 30K on it. Not likely anyway. Like I say to students, getting your first deal takes that weight. Like the hardest deal is the first deal. The second hardest deal is the second deal. Like I say to the students, our goal is to get one deal, then 2 deals, and then 1 deal a month. Then we grow from there. Some listen to that and they go, great idea. You want to make profit, but then you've got to be able to move the deal. I've worked with, they weren't students, but just people I know that they've come to me for some assistance, and they'll try and make, like 20K on a deal where there wasn't 20K. There was a $20,000 property. They'll try to make 40 grand, and the property was probably worth 28. I asked them why they're trying to sell for 40, and she said, look, I'm doing it with my sister, or I'm doing it with my family member. We want to make 10K each. And it's like, well, it's not what you want to make, it's what the market's willing to pay for the property. I said, take the 8K. That's good money. And I say to people, you got to put it in perspective. Or I'll ask that person, can I ask you a question? How much money do you earn for your job? I make $4,000 a month, or $2,500 a month, working this many hours, 160, 170, 180 hours a month. Well, you can make $8,000 here in a little over 4 days, or in 6 hours of time. I go, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but we still want to make the 20K. I'm like, oh, okay, no problem. So we've got to, I'm very big on that. You've got to always put it back into that perspective and think, well, sometimes you can't make the 20K. And you know what happened in the end? She came back to me and asked me if I had a buyer at 30. I said, no, I don't have a buyer at 30. But in the end, let it go. She made nothing. So she made 100% of nothing. So
yeah. And we quite often say that you're better off with 10 or 20% of something than 100% of nothing. And that goes back down to mindset and whether you're looking at the long term. And we've talked about this too, and you're big on this, Warren, is you're in for it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And small pieces of the pie, if you go and take a little small piece out of every pie, you've got a full pie on your plate by the time you put them all together. So A lot of people don't think like that. They see the big assignment fees in the Facebook groups and they go, oh, yeah, I just need to do 1 or 2 of them a year. And in reality, and I actually was in a group early days with a guy that did an $85,000 deal. It does happen. And he's still in the business. He's a hard worker. I see him out there. But that just doesn't happen all the time. He'll tell you that. It doesn't happen all the time.
That was $1 million property. So,
yeah. Yeah, that's right. That was in California. And it was and he did a great job to land in that, but he's not going to get many of those in his career. It's going to be few and far between. But what he's going to do, because he's a hard worker, is he's going to turn up every day. He's going to do X amount of cold calls. He's going to do X amount of this. He's going to do X amount of whatever other advertising. And he's going to have success because he's in it for the long haul. So, we've only been in it 2 years. You can imagine people that have been in it 10, 15 years, how much of that people they've seen come and go, wanting the quick dollars. And like you said, it's about traction. It's about getting your first deal, proof of concept. And that was really important for us being in another country, because we had anyone that knew over here just said, have you people lost your mind? What are you doing? And we had to battle that. So that first deal, and then the second one just consolidates it. And from there, it's the bigger picture. So that's probably the number one point that you've sort of gone over there, Warren C. But we're actually part of a small international group. There's a heap of people doing it internationally. But what we found right in the middle of all this COVID-19 hit, and all of a sudden virtual wholesaling blew up, didn't it? It blew up, and there's people doing it from all over America. So there's also people doing it from outside of the country. How did you take advantage of it blowing up? Did you network more? How did you accelerate? Because I think you accelerated probably because of the virtual stuff, because you went into many states. What was the secret sauce behind that, or are you going to reveal?
Going into different states or different markets. COVID helped to the point where people were reluctant to do face-to-face, the sellers. And even, the buyers were all over the place anyway, out of state, and they were doing everything electronically anyway. But and I found a lot of buyers were reluctant, or probably more open to doing sight unseen or buying off photos, as opposed to going to view a property or sending people there. So they might have had contractors, say in Toledo, that they would send out, but the contractor wouldn't go out because of COVID. So we probably had people who were more open to buying sight unseen. As in growing into other markets, I basically just followed our buyers. This is something a lot of wholesalers don't do. When I speak to wholesalers, and they're like, how are you able to go into other markets? I think we've done deals now. We're about to do a couple of deals in Battle Creek in Michigan, 1 or 2 deals there. But we've done deals in about 9 or 10 different cities now. I think Massachusetts, Ohio is the smallest place we've done a deal. But we follow our buyers. We find out, like we're in Toledo, I speak to our buyers, where else are you buying? Because I can actually see, because if I've pulled a list of cash buyers, I can go to that cash buyer list. I can find out their property that they bought. I put that in the prop stream. I can see all the linked properties. Well, now they've got the linked aspect of it. I can see they got properties in other markets, but I generally ask them. I don't like to say, look, I know you got properties in 15 cities or 4 cities. So I ask them the question, where else are you buying properties? I don't only just market to Toledo. I'm happy to market in other areas. And then some of those people say, look, we buy in Youngstown. Okay, let me do some marketing in Youngstown. So what I do then, if I know I've got 2 or 3 buyers, and I know they're legit buyers because they've actually bought off me, we'll then go to Youngstown. We pull a list for Youngstown. I know I've got 2 or 3 buyers for Youngstown. I'll go and build up a cash buyer list also in case they don't buy. And the same thing, I do a couple of deals there. I get talking to the buyers, build that relationship, that rapport. I ask them where else they're buying. And some of those people, or half of those people, were open to buying at Warren, Ohio, which is probably about 45 minutes away. So the same thing. So that's how I've been relocating. And what happens is we find, because I do texting, you exhaust the city. Like you pull a list, you can exhaust that city pretty quickly, that list pretty quickly. And I find the other thing is too, when you're talking to your buyers, how many deals are they buying per month, per year? Are they buying rentals? Are they buying properties or rehab? We've got investors that buy rentals. They might buy one every 2 or 3 months. So there's no point trying to get 15, 20, 30 contracts per city if I can't move them. I'm better off doing a little bit in Toledo, a little bit somewhere else, and go back. Sort of throttle it in a way where I can actually have that supply and demand sort of balance. And then just the other day, there's a realtor that I work with in Youngstown and Warren, and he's bought a few deals off us. I think 3 deals now from us. He sent me an email. He said, I'm looking for deals. We're expanding, or he's expanding his investment business to Tulsa, Oklahoma. I think I pronounced that right, Oklahoma. So
you're packing the suitcase, the virtual suitcase, and heading to Oklahoma. There you go, following your buyer.
Not at this point. We've got enough happening in the market that we're in. I did ask him, has he got a team there? He's building his team up. I let him build his team up, let him settle in. Maybe in a month or 2, 3 months, 4 months, whatever time. I don't want to get distracted where our team's got a fair bit happening at the moment. But again, following the buyer, he's a legit buyer. He's bought 3 or 4 deals. I think 3 deals off me in the past. We can always go there. And the price points are very similar to Toledo. I don't know the area yet, but I know the price points are very similar. I think the median house price is about $160K. The rentals are probably going to be a similar cap. That's what he's looking for, a 10, 12, 14% net cap rate, rental return. So, but again, that's just an explanation of how I've followed the buyers, and that's just something that I think people should be doing.
So we'll call that a Warren C. Thunderbolt, because what you're saying is you reverse engineer it, and you put a lot of time into your buyers. Like once they're repeat buyers, you call them, you nurture them, and you just grow your buyers list, and you actually become not a friend with them, but they know who you are. They know all about you. They know, we've talked about it. You tell them Australian stories. They know you're in Australia. Yeah. You form quite a good relationship, and then they tell you what they're doing, and you sort of reverse engineer it to a certain degree. Whereas a lot of people just go get a deal.
There. It's finding out, are they buying rentals or rehab? If they're buying rentals or rehabs, what's the price range? How many are they buying? What returns they're looking for? And
so
then
get on the phone.
That's on the phone. Yeah, I talk to them.
Yeah, get on the phone. Yeah.
Especially when they buy one property or they're negotiating. If they've made an offer on a property or there's a little bit of communication, I'll get on the phone. They know I'm in Australia. I say, look, I'm doing this virtually from Australia. And they ask me why I'm doing it from Australia. I refer it similar. I say, look, Australian property is very similar to California. A lot of these buyers are in California. I'm doing this business virtually like you are from California because of the same reasons. The rent cap, the rent returns are very low here. And build that. Being Australian is my point of difference. And I sort of do that tomorrow. When I call them, they know who I am.
G'day, mate.
Yeah.
G'day, mate.
And find out what they're looking for, and again, how often, what's the criteria. So when I'm pulling my lists, there's a period of time we had people that were buying rentals, so I was pulling rental lists, and 98% of the wholesalers were going for vacants. I'm hitting up rental lists, and I mean they're a little bit challenging, but they're also rewarding as well, because if you've got buyers for them, there was a lot less people, a lot less competition going for the rental lists. So,
just for a sec, Warren, so can I we'll continue with that. I noticed we're sort of hitting 40 minutes. Anyone that's watching, if you've got any questions that you want, type them in the chat. I've got the chat up on the side. I've actually worked out how to do that now. So 2022, look out. But ask Warren some questions. If you've got any questions, ask him. There's a couple of people watching live. Ask some questions because, like I said, Warren's very analytic and he's looked at a lot of this sort of stuff. So chuck some questions in. Sorry, Warren. So I just thought if we get some questions coming in now, we can finish off with some Q&A. So you were saying about rentals. You were talking about rentals, like finding out what your actual buyers are requiring and how you engineer it. So
yeah, I think what happens is people get deals. People who have done 5, 6 deals, 10 deals, they go and get more deals, more contracts, and they're putting into Facebook groups, and they're doing all this sort of marketing and Craigslist, and they're getting hit up by other wholesalers. And I'm like, you've done like 10 deals. Like, have you ever spoken to your buyers? And they're like, no, we just do an email blast, and people come and say they're buying. I go, why don't you go back to your 10 buyers and get the criteria, because you've already got the relationship. And there was one guy, he'd done 12 deals, and that was what he was doing, just email blasting, people wasting his time, other wholesalers. He was a bit lost. He'd done deals, but he was a little bit he was chasing his tail a bit.
Yep.
And I said, look, can I ask you how many, you've done 12 deals, so it's 12 buyers. Each deal, how many, did you have other offers? And he said, one deal, he had like 10 people make offers. Other ones, he had 2 or 3. So I said, you got 6. I mean, some were overlapping. I mean, some of the buyers, but there was probably about 25, 26 unique people, like just different people. So I said, well, I'd be hopping on the phone, and I basically just suggested to him the questions I ask. What are you looking to buy? Vacants or rentals, and price point, and how many bedrooms. And so he did that, and he went back and he got the buy box of 26 people, whatever. I can't remember how many people it was now. He got their buying criteria, and he said that was easy. I go, well, you've had some sort of communication with them. I just sort of say to them, look, I want to serve you. I want to bring the properties to you that suit your needs, rather than email blasting. And I want to add you to my VIP list. So then he was able to then he goes, what do I do with his data? I said, what's the most common theme between all these 26 people? And I said, list that, 3 plus 2, 1.5 bath, blah, 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 whatever it might have been, the price range. There was some rentals, there was some vacants. And then I suggested he go back into Propstram and pull a list to suit that criteria. And then he started doing more deals. But he went from like this up to like this. Like, he just started to get traction from that. I don't think he's even doing his email blasts anymore, because I think he realized a lot of them were wholesalers and people that weren't. He did the old Facebook, wholesale group scraping the email type strategy.
Yeah.
Where I suggested he go back to his buyers and people that made offers. The most legitimate buyer on your buyers list is a person that bought a property off you. There's nothing better than that. So, and you've got that relationship with them already.
Yeah. Yep. And Warren C, another story you told me, which I think's awesome, is with virtual wholesaling blowing up, you deal with a lot of students that are in a certain market that's a great market, and they're off trying to wholesale over the other side of the country. They haven't done a deal, and they're sort of stuck. What was your advice to those people?
Well, people hear virtual wholesaling, and I think they got to do virtual wholesaling, but you can do virtual wholesaling in your backyard. I mean, it doesn't have to be in another city. What I found was, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier. Now, if I'm asking a question, not only just a student, but if someone's just reached out to me for some advice, I'll ask them, which city are you in? If they're in California or San Diego or New York, well, it's a bit different. Okay, find a Midwest, Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky or somewhere, or Texas or somewhere. But, I had a guy in Detroit, great guy. He's working towards his first deal, just a random guy, but he's got a bit of a story, a couple of young kids and stuff, and he's working hard at it. And he's trying to do some deals in virtual markets. He gave me a list of 3 or 4 markets. I'm like, what are you doing? You're in Detroit. Like, it's probably the wholesale capital of the US. It's one of the best markets, probably the wholesale or Michigan, But he asked me what he should do. I said, if that was me, I'd be driving. If I was in Detroit and I know the neighborhoods and I know the good neighborhoods, I'd be driving for dollars. So I said to him, look, he goes, yeah, good idea. So get back to me when you've got 200 properties and we'll talk more. He sent me a message about 4 days later, 5 days later. He said, I've got 550 properties. What do I do now? So
wow. Wow.
He took that on board. But yeah, there was another guy in Kentucky, and he was trying to virtual wholesale. He had a list of 3 or 4 places. I'm like, you're in Kentucky, like, just do it in your backyard. There's deals there, like 1 deal a month.
Yeah, especially to start with. You can always go virtually once you've got a bit of traction. So, yeah,
there's enough deals in one market for someone forever. Like, how many deals do you want? I mean, we've said this in the past. If we have to do virtual because we're here, but if we're there,
that's right.
I mean, I'd be living in a place where I could just drive around or go and see the property.
Well, yeah, the last guest I had in, Dutch Jackson, we've made a commitment. When I get to Dallas one day, we're going to go driving for dollars because we get excited about it in Australia, thinking, oh, there'd be grouse cruising, looking, because that just doesn't happen in Australia either. So that's an interesting point, isn't it? We would be out there running around with bandit signs, driving for dollars. So I think, that's something that is just taken for granted in your home market. And you gave that advice, and the guy, to his credit, took it and really succeeded. Now, we're running out of time, Warren C. So I want to get the top 5 thunderbolts from Warren C. The Wizard of Oz, being an Australian, and like I said, we sort of see things from a different perspective because our markets over here is different. What are the top 5 thunderbolts that you've learnt so far in your 2 years that you would share with people watching this? Firstly, people that, like I said before, that are relatively new, people that are struggling. What would be the top 5 just short thunderbolts that you'd give them advice, even just in point form?
I'm very big on JVing. The reason I'm big on JVing, again, this is a Garyvee point, and that I heard 3 or 4 times and it resonated with me, was you got to focus on your strengths. A lot of people try and do the whole process from start to finish, which is good, and there's people that do that successfully. For me, if you're an acquisition person or you're a good person talking to sellers, then that should be your role. That person shouldn't necessarily be the person doing the contracts. That person should be spending, it's like a sports person or
So focus on your strengths and do your strengths.
As Garyvee says, quadruple down on your strengths. If you're a disposition person, Christina, who I work with, is great doing. We do, the Google Sheets and the contracts and the transaction coordinating. That's her skill.
Yep.
She's great at that. I can do it, but it's not my strength. I suck at it. I'd rather let her do all that, and I focus on, let's say, the disposition or looking for some opportunities. We sort of overlap a bit too.
Yeah.
Point
number 2. I'll keep you moving here, Warren. I'm sorry to hurry up. I'll put you on the spot.
That's good. So we've got that. JVing, obviously, for that reason. The mindset, the steps, keep it simple. Don't get too overwhelmed. Yep. Start with one market first. That's another one.
Yep.
I expect the people that got like 4 or 5 markets they want to start in, like I did when I started. It was a mess.
So focus.
One market, one strategy. Like a wholesale. Don't get too stuck on creative finance sub 2s until later.
Yeah.
Partner with someone that can do that with you. The value of the first deal, I think, like I said, having the first deal outweighs. Again, you want to make profit, but if there's not 20K, then there's only 8K or 4K or 2K, take the money.
Yep.
I think another one is the speed and the ease of the transaction sometimes outweighs trying to squeeze an extra, like if you got a person that buys off sight unseen, and he buys a deal. I've got a guy in Columbus, he bought some deals off me. One deal he bought in 12 minutes from photos. It was a JV deal. The lady I was working with, or who had the deal, said, "Do you think we can get a little bit more, like $500 more?" I said, no. Let's just stick to this buyer. We could end up losing him trying to chase an extra $500. Got to do showings, and that might end up falling over. So sometimes you got to have that ease the deal. And again, that buyer that has a history, just take his money.
And so number 4, give us thunderbolt number 4, Warren C.
I thought I was up to about 15, but
well, no, Yeah, well, you probably
Which is
could be,
wrong.
but I'm
Wrong.
looking for big bang key point headline. So,
I think that's the most, like, that's basically
commitment would be another one.
a
Commit
commitment.
long
It's a
term.
marathon long term. The other thing too, and I want to say this is something we've spoken about. This is not a bullet point, but a little bit longer than a bullet point. But it's this business. I realized at the start, and we all know this, who've been in it for a while, is the whole transaction is many steps. You can do any part of that chain, that any of those transactions to make money. Like you had Nick on here, who's a great guy. I mean, I love listening to the guy.
Yeah.
He does his lead mining, skip tracing, cold calling. Then you got other guys. I think you had a guy that does the Facebook marketing,
Yeah.
and he was a great guy to listen to. He does his Facebook
Niche.
marketing.
They've got a niche.
Yeah. We talk about this, the picks and shovels. You can provide a service. You don't need to be a wholesaler as such. You can provide a service. The guy in Kentucky, he had no budget, no money, and he's like, I want to make it big in this business. Well, he could be the boots on the ground in Kentucky, like we said. Charge $300-400, put the lockbox on there. Be the go-to person in Kentucky. Don't be a wholesaler, because you can't be a wholesaler boots on the ground. It'd be a bit of a conflict.
Yeah.
Be the boots on the ground, Kentucky.com, whatever you want to call yourself.
Yeah.
Nice shirt, and you open the place up to people and go and do the photos, do a walkthrough video, provide a full service for wholesalers.
So make $2,000 a week in Kentucky doing that, and then so there's not a conflict of interest. Go into another virtual market and do your wholesaling over there, but the $2,000 will be able to sustain you starting to have a budget.
There's a lot of. I mean, when I first started, I had an investor. He wanted leads. He goes, I'm sick of paying wholesale leads. I sold him leads $100 a lead.
Yeah.
They were text message leads
that
were positive. I put them on a spreadsheet. I sold them to him for $3,000. It was actually 32 leads, and he closed them himself.
Yeah.
And when I first started, and I made $3,000. I think it cost me about $150 or $200. There's another income. So each aspect, again, we all think, we all watch the YouTube. We think we've got to get the deal and close it and make, do all that work. But just do one component. If you've got no money, be the boots on the ground. If you've got no money, be the caller. If you're a good caller, call up. Be the cold caller for someone.
Yeah.
With them. Just get a dialer. Or that cold caller can say to a wholesaler, you pay for the dialer. I've got no money. You give me the list. I'm going to spend 6 hours a day cold calling. Can we do a split?
Yeah. That's awesome advice, Warren C. And I know you're big on that. And like you said, you've worked with Christina for a long time now. You've got other people that do certain roles, and you're massive on play your role, like the old footy team. Play your role, play your position.
The deal from the start was to build a machine.
Yep.
You're on the right seats. I don't want to. I mean, I've got a young family. I'm not up all night. I get up around about 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time until, obviously until the whole day here in Australia.
Yep.
So I get 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. in the US is like a good time for me. But again, build that machine. I probably took a year longer to build my business, but I was setting that foundation. I was patient. Again, going back to Garyvee, be patient.
Yep.
You look at the macro, and this is something me and Christina speak about a lot, is we talk about the macro, how it looks like in 2 years' time, and then we step it back and start putting little pieces in place.
Well, I'm going to have to wrap it up, Warren C., but I want to, 2022, how much are you going to amp it up this year? Have you decided to amp it up and go next level this year? Like we talk about goals.
Yeah, well, I think from looking at our numbers, and even our numbers, we're only 10, 11 days in, I think it is now, but we're looking at $1 million this year. It may even be more. Millions as for our team is pretty conservative. We've got about 100 and about 90, I think, in the pipeline pretty much now. We've got I think 4 signed contracts at the moment. Probably 3 or 4 signed contracts. We've got a couple of contracts going out today and tomorrow, and getting signed off, a couple of inspections this week. So I think we've got about 80, 90 in the pipeline at the moment, pretty much ready to go. the goal was a mil, which is about 86,000 a month. I think we'll hit 120, 130 the way we're going this month. But yeah, the mill, I think we've got to have goals. I'm very big on setting those targets, and we've got to set up. I thought the mill was a little bit big, but I'm starting to think now. Actually, the other day we think that's probably a little bit on the low side now, but we'll keep it at that until month 3, month 4, and then we'll analyze it and increase it if we have to. But we've got to have those targets.
It's not a bad effort in 2 years for a young guy from the streets in Harry Warren, the tough streets in Harry Warren, Melbourne, to be doing in the US. So that's amazing. And I've got your key points here. I'm gonna go out with those thunderbolts. But I really appreciate you coming on, Warren C, because it hasn't been easy to get you on because you're very humble, you're very quiet, you don't like the spotlight. And I really appreciate you coming on. Like you said, it's not your natural environment. Your natural environment is doing the numbers, doing all that sort of stuff. So I appreciate you coming on, and I hope this can inspire people. If Warren can do it from Melbourne, Australia, and then actually have an impact, not just with the students that he's coaching, but people that he's helped through the 2 years journey. I know he's helped hundreds of people get their first deal, helped them out. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all this with us. I mean, wish we had more time. We've gone about 15 minutes over, but I could talk to you all day.
Appreciate your time.
No, it's just been fantastic, Warren. And the key points that we got down was focus on your strengths, not your weaknesses. Outsource your weaknesses. Focus on your strengths. The KISS. This is you love this one. Keep it simple, stupid. Don't get caught up in analysis paralysis. Don't go chasing shiny things. So the KISS is number 2. Focus, really focus and laser focus on what you're doing. Don't spray and pray. You got to really focus. Commitment's another big thing, and that's what you've done. If you're said, I'm here for the bigger picture. I'm going to be here in 10 years doing this. So commitment. And the last one, which is really something that you talk about a lot, is niche. Find yourself a niche. And you mentioned Nicholas Nick, who I've had on. He's just carved out an empire on lead mining. So I'll go into that saying you said. In the gold rush in Australia, more people made money out of selling picks and shovels than they did out of finding gold. And that's what Warren sees.
But that's all over the world. That's around the world. But that's gold rush happened in the US as well. The picks and shovels.
Yeah, picks and shovels.
That made the money, and we often talk about that and laugh, but it all comes back to that. It's the people who have the prop stream makes a lot of money because they're providing a service or a platform, and Nicholas Nick makes money from tracing
niche markets. Yeah.
You got your Facebook guy making his money from that, and providing the postcard guy makes money from postcards, and
yep, that's right. So awesome, Warren C. Appreciate you coming on. It's a pleasure. If people want to reach out to you, I'm just going to quickly put you've got your Facebook there. Reach out and Facebook friend Warren C. You see it on the screen there. He's a networker from way back, so get on Facebook, friend him, and reach out to him somehow. And like I said, he's done it from another country. He's done it, and he's done it very successfully. Now, anyone that's watching this, if you can smash the like button, and you'll be able to go onto YouTube, Graham Solomon, the Thunder Down Under YouTube, and you can watch this and you can watch other videos. But this is going to go in it's a classic in the archives from the Wizard of Oz all the way over from Melbourne, Australia. It's been a pleasure, and I wish you the best. And I can see you hitting your goals this year, Warren. So good luck with it all, and hopefully 2022 is next level stuff where you you're shooting for the stars and you hit the moon. So thank you for coming on, and thank you for the thunderbolts you left before, and you've been from the Thunder from Down Under and the Wizard of Oz. You've been thunderstruck.
Appreciate you having me on here, and hopefully it adds some value to some of the people that watch this, and happy to help out in any way. People getting their first deal or just multiple deals, or even just analysing their business and trying to get them going again. So happy to do that.
Yeah, boom. All right, we'll sign out, and thank you very much. Bye for now for everyone.